Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. I am kind of weirded out by this new set that was announced not too long ago, the Tactical Tri Pack. This is kind of a follow up idea on two things, in my opinion. Um, One, this is kind of a follow up, kind of addition to what the Tactical Tri decks have been for the last 2 years. If you don't know, the Tactical Tri decks, very simple, like kind of like starter decks, not a structure deck because there are no new cards in those products in the OCG, but they kind of give you a ready to play semi-competitive, more rogue competitive, local competitive, uh, pre-built deck for an archetype. Last year they did Eldritch, Cyber Dragons, and Live Twins. Later down the line, those archetypes got support, which is nice. So that way, anybody who picked those up, who was a kind of a player trying to transition over to the more competitive side, did get more support to upgrade their deck down the line. We can have an argument on whether or not you think the support was good enough for some of those. I think the Live Twin stuff was quite good, but the other two decks didn't really get a big enough upgrade yet. And there's nothing saying that they won't give them more, cards down the line. But yeah, that's like the idea. And this year, we don't know what any new cards will be, but we know that this year's tactical tri decks are Rescue Ace and Exosister, which, if you're a fan of those, keep an eye on those because I would expect them to get new support down the line here, which is pretty exciting as well. And then they announced this, the Tactical Tri Pack. This is a like booster pack based on kind of the formula of the Tactical Tri decks, but I don't really know what we're looking at here. We don't really have many specs going on aside from like very, very vague stuff, which we'll cover right here. So, what comes in this set, it consists of cards from 3 different themes, as well as generic and general purpose cards. So, you'll be able to build different kinds of decks using only this pack. So, you take 3 themes, similar to the tactical tri decks last year. You get basically all the cards you should need, including some generic cards, some generic staples, on top of all the in archetype cards you would need to kind of build a base version of the deck all in one pack, which is nice. But it's coming in packs now in a set that you have to open rather than just a pre built deck that you just buy one structure, one starter deck, and you're kind of good to go. So it's a little bit different there. That's more of an OCG problem than the TCG problem. I'm more concerned about what these new cards are going to be because, as you see, for the other main thing for this set is it includes brand new cards that add new tactics to existing decks, making this a perfect product for existing duelists and those who haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh in a while. Here's why that's weird to me. This is just worded so strange. Normally, when we get something like this announced, they will just come right out and say, these archetypes are getting new cards. Like there's 3 themes in here. These themes are getting new cards. And I know they kind of say that here, but it's not in the same way. In the past, they would just be so blatantly outright, like in a duelist pack per se. They would word it just like 3 new duelists are getting support. They're each getting 7 new cards apiece. Or you know what I mean? Like they'll just be right out front with it. The way this is worded is just so weirdly vague to me that it almost makes me think that these archetypes may not be getting direct support here. Like whatever the archetype is, let's say it's Subterror, one of my favorites, they may not be getting sub-terror cards. They may be getting generic cards that maybe are good in flip decks and go from there. But the way it's worded is just so weird and off from the normal breakdown for this. There's really important things we can. There's other things too we can kind of like talk about with this product that I think are also worth mentioning. One, look at this, and this is just Yugipedia. This isn't necessarily the OCG's website or anything, but this set is lined up after Duelist of Explosion link wise, which means that this set to me, and when they announced the date, it kind of lined up for me as well. When I thought about it, I was like, I think this set is just replacing Duelist of Explosion, like straight up. That's what it looks like, or the Duelist packs in general, which made sense. They had kind of made their rounds. They had covered 90% of the most relevant, anime characters in the show and everything. And just because they don't have the duels packs anymore doesn't mean they're never going to cover those anymore. Look at last year. Last year we got the tactical tridex and cyber dragons were in there. That's the first time cyber dragons got anything in like 5 years. So it still worked out, right? In terms of like you can still end up in here anyway by being an anime deck, but it just also opens the doors for way more archetypes that need it to also end up in here as well, which I like. Um, And that kind of brings us to like a kind of a theory I have. So because this is worded so weird, I thought of like, what if they make new cards in this pack, but the new cards apply to all three decks? And so what they might do is what I can maybe see them doing is picking three decks that kind of have a common theme, right? And then they make support based around that theme that the decks share, in the way they function, or like the certain cards they play with, and support those areas specifically. So the example I thought of, again, showing subtears here, flip deck, old TCG exclusive deck, very one of my classic favorites. Ninjas also flip based, fan favorite, old deck, has a ton of cards, really cool. And then the new version, Mimigul. I know this isn't even printed in the OCG yet, so this is just an example. So don't take this to heart. Flip deck, a little bit different. It flips stuff on your opponent's field, but still flip based altogether. And so, what if they do something like this where they pick three archetypes that have a common theme, all being flip based archetypes, and then they just make really strong, like kind of generic, just like flip support, where all three decks gain like a new engine. Like basically think Fiendsmith, but it's only flip decks, and flip decks have struggled. So I'd actually be okay with like a new engine that's like Fiendsmith-esque and how strong and applicable it can be, but it really only applies to flip decks. It really won't have as much application for other decks. I'd be totally fine with that. And now you can play a half Subterror, half whatever this new engine would be. And it would help you maybe flip your stuff faster. It would get its own interruptions. It can almost be its own standalone engine in some cases. And like go something like that. That's something that kind of like seems really possible. Konami's been taking this route of making a lot more generic engines in the last couple of years. So I could see them kind of going at these archetypes in that manner. I also think it's possible that they're not even that good. Like whatever the wave is, it's like decent, but not crazy. Kind of similar to not kind, I guess a little bit similar to the tactical Tridex, where last year, right, Lich, Subterror, Live Twins, they actually didn't get support in the first core set, where they didn't get direct support, but they got Clockwork Knight, which has really good synergy with Cyber Dragon. They got like the zombie field spell that can dump Eldritch, which is nice, but like doesn't like not crazy for Eldritch. And then there was something else with Live Twins, I thought, that like had like kind of cool synergy. Oh, Abalaku. Abalaku has good synergy with Live Twins. None direct, and they're all nice and would probably find a home in each of these individual decks, most likely, but not enough to like take them to the next level. And then in the next core set, they got the actual named support. The Live Twin stuff was the best stuff, but still, they may do something here where like this is the set that has maybe the more generic stuff that kind of helps all three decks in one way or another, but like doesn't make them crazy, helps people get started on some of these strategies. And then maybe in the next core set, that's when they hit you with like the straight or like named support. 2 new cards for Subterror, 2 new cards for Ninjas, 2 new cards for Mimigul, if or whatever the decks they choose. I'm very curious how they attempt to go after this. I feel like everything's going to make a lot more sense once we see the first new cards revealed. They probably won't even reveal all the new cards all at once, but like once they show the first archetype and what the new cards that work with it are, we'll have very quickly we'll have an idea. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. I've thought about that as well. You guys may tell me I'm crazy and say I'm definitely thinking too hard about this, just reading the verbiage on the translation of the initial product release and saying, John, you're reading too far into it. It's probably just going to be, this could just end up being just basically Duelist pack, except they're not restricted to only picking anime archetypes. Now they can pick Burning Abyss, historical fan favorite archetype that hasn't gotten support in years. Give them 5 to 7 new cards. And it may just be as simple as that. They just didn't want to be handcuffed by anime decks because it seems like it kind of run dry a little bit. People were kind of tired of anime decks. The duels packs have not been very successful in years. So other than 7th Tachyon, last year's duels pack had basically nothing actually relevant in it. So, we'll see. I really want to see where it goes. I'm very excited to see what the first reveals are. I hope whatever happens, the most important thing always, no matter what, especially coming from me, which is we're a more competitively oriented channel, where like if a set comes out and there's no competitive relevancy, I'm like, okay, like it's cool for the people who like it, but it's just not, it doesn't affect me. And there's a lot of players. I think the players that spend the most money are the competitive players. So they should be making sure there is something for competitive players in almost every set. And so whatever it comes down to, it's about execution. Whether it's what I said, taking three archetypes that have a similar theme, giving generic support that help all three at the same time, or it's just them basically doing duelist pack, but it doesn't have to be based around anime stuff. Whatever they do, they just need to execute. As long as the support is good and at least takes these archetypes to, there's like a baseline of like solid rogue to tier 2, even tier 1. Like if something goes up to tier 1, like nobody's going to complain about it unless it's like degenerate stuff. But as long as it's like an archetype people like and it's not degenerate, people will be like, oh, that's cool, just a cool new tier 1 deck. You can't go wrong. So that should be the baseline they're aiming for, honestly, for all three archetypes. It's like when we get deck build packs and like you have a Ryuge in there. You have two awesome archetypes, but there's a Ryuge. So you're just like, why is that even here? Just seems like pointless now. But to even throw that in here, because nobody, like hardly anybody's gonna actually go for it. But still. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Where do you think it's going? Am I reading too far into this? Do I just need to shut up and sit and wait and this video is pointless? That's possible too, but it's also fun to talk about. It's just on my mind and I wanted to get it out there. I may talk soon about Exosister and Rescue Ace respectively, just because we know that they're likely to get support in the next year, and just talk about where they sit since they've kind of been power crept, both decks that have had competitive success, but kind of need that bump, and just talk about like where they probably Konami would likely focus on that bump would be cool. So anyway, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you made it this far in the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I mean, come on. If you made it this far with me rambling, then you like me rambling. Just admit it. And, subscribe for more, because there's going to be more rambles down the line. So I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, I'll see you in the next one. I'll keep up to date on all things Yu-Gi-Oh! News and otherwise. Peace.